And now Magnus plays the move king to g5. Very important you have this pawn on h2 to stop the check, because, for example, if you were to go king g5 here, rook g3 would actually be a checkmate. King gets stuck. You have no squares available. But with the pawn being on h2 here, there's simply no check on g3, and therefore the king being very active means white wins on the spot. Now, perhaps in this position, Jing Yao could have played like king g8 here to try to get the king to one of these squares to support the pawn, like king g5, king h7. But after e6, with white simply pushing the p through, and now the king being far away, this also is a very, very easy win for white. So we get this position with king g5. We get rook f3. Magnus plays rook a6, rook f2. And now we get the move rook takes a3, rook takes pawn. If rook g2, Magnus would simply block with the rook, and there's no checkmate. And after rook takes h2 and rook g4 here, white is winning. The rook guards both pawns. If black plays king f7, after e6 takes with the active king here, white should be winning. It might require a little bit of technique, but technically speaking, this should be pretty straightforward. So we get rook takes h2. Magnus plays rook a8, king f7, we got the check, king f8, and now Magnus simply takes the pawn on g6, with the rook being able to check the king and win the pawn here. This is all but over. We get rook h4, rook f7, king e8, and now Magnus plays move pawn to e6. It's not the only way to win in this position. Here, I believe that in this position, you could also play rook to f5, maybe rook f5 is wrong. Or king g5, which is also winning. But e6 is very solid here because the pawn supports the rook guards the pawn, king and rook both attack the pawn, and it's just all but over. So we get rook h6, king f5, rook h5, king e4, g6, and now Magnus plays rook g7, attacking the pawn, rook goes back, king to e5, king f8, Magnus plays rook to a7, we get rook h5, and here Magnus plays move king to d6. Now king to f6 would also be winning, but with Magnus having plenty of time, there's no reason to allow this. The reason this move wins is after check takes,